Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission's regular meeting for April 22nd, 2024. This time we'll move to roll call. Commissioner Rasmussen.
Commissioner Bott,
Present.
Commissioner Britton,
Here.
Commissioner Fisher,
Here.
Chair Frazier,
Here.
Commissioner Knable,
Here.
Commissioner Rasmussen here, Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3 is approval of the agenda unless there is a motion to amend. I'd look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Rasmussen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Item 4 tonight is open forum. This is a chance for anyone who's here in the audience tonight to speak on something that is not on tonight's agenda. So if there's something you'd like to speak to the commission about that's not on the agenda, go ahead and step to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
I know the answer to this, but I better clarify because if I don't. Okay, so tonight, there are public hearings, and that means that audience members can approach here and ask you questions, correct?
So there are public hearings on lot split at 9670 Kimbro, the school bus garage fuel tank, and the zoning and sign code update. Those will be
Yes.
public hearings that we will discuss when those come up.
Okay, and so then my next question is on the zoning and code amendments, the zoning. So are you going to go through them one by one, or are you going to like just take them as a bundle?
Well, it's one application, so they move as an application.
Thank you.
Yes, and Ms. Mather, if you could, I know we all know your name and
I'm so
address,
sorry,
but
you
that's
know,
all right.
I mean, I feel personally connected to this group. No, my name is Bonnie Matter, 6649 Inskip Avenue South, Cottage Grove. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else for open forum? Something that's not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll close open forum. Item 5 is Chair's explanation of the hearing process. The Planning Commission is a volunteer advisory group to the City Council. One of the commission's functions is to hold public hearings and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. The purpose of these public hearings is to provide an opportunity for each applicant and citizens to present information, ask questions, and express opinions. Since these proceedings are televised and recorded for the public record, anyone wishing to speak must step up to the podium and give their name and address before addressing the commission. Staff reports are prepared and provided to the applicant and Planning Commission in advance of the meeting. The first step in the hearing will be for staff to present a summary of their report. The applicant will then have an opportunity to briefly explain the proposal and provide additional information or comments. Anyone wanting to speak in favor or against the proposal will then be heard. Upon completion of the testimony, the hearing will be closed to the public comment. Planning Commission will then discuss and act on the matter. 2 complete agenda packets are available for viewing on the back table. Please do not remove those items. The City Council will act on agenda items 6.2, School Bus Garage Preliminary Plat and Site Plan Review, and 6.3, Zoning and Sign Code Updates at their meeting on Wednesday, May 1st, 2024 at 7 p.m. Agenda item 6.1, Lot Split at 9670 Kimbro, will be dealt with at the meeting on Wednesday, May 15th, 2024, also at 7 p.m. With that, we'll move on to item 6, public hearings and applications. 6.1 is the lot split at 9670 Kimbro. Cases MS 2024-011 and V 2024-011 with Riley Rooney presenting.
All right. So good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Before you today is a proposal for 9670 Kimbro Avenue South. They will have a minor subdivision and variance application before you. So the lot is currently located on a little over of 10 acres of land east of Cottage Grove Ravine Park and north of 110th Street South. The lot is currently zoned rural residential and is guided as rural residential in the 2040 comprehensive plan. The parcel currently contains a single residence with a few accessory structures. And then a little bit of background information on some of the prior approvals for this lot. So in 2017, the Brown Farm was subdivided from its previous 17.33 acres into two separate parcels, one 5-acre lot to the north and then one 10-acre lot to the south. This essentially created the parcels that are present on site today. And then in 2019, the applicant had applied for a minor subdivision to subdivide the newly created 10-acre parcel, again, in half, or not in half, but into two separate parcels. One 3-acre parcel and one 7.16 acre parcel. The larger 7-acre lot would house the existing current residential property and accessory structures, and the 3-acre lot would be for the future construction of a rural residential home. At that time, the applicant had also applied for a variance to the minimum lot width to create a flag lot here. The minor subdivision and variance were both approved at the May 18th, 2019 City Council meeting, but the deeds were not recorded at the county by the applicant at that time. Since the lot split was never finalized, the variance became null and void 1 year following the approvals, so in May of 2020. While the approvals for a minor subdivision don't expire like a variance does, the applicant has proposed a changed layout to the previous proposed lot split, which is why he was required to submit both for a new minor subdivision and for a variance. So that kind of brings us up to date. So the applicant has proposed to subdivide the existing 10-acre parcel into two. He plans this time to retain a 4 acres for the existing rural residential lot and accessory structures, and then to create a 6-acre parcel that could support the future construction of a rural residential property. They are also requesting a variance to the city's minimum lot width, as well as a 6-foot setback for the existing driveway on site. So the minimum lot width requirement for this lot is 180 feet. The applicant is requesting 92 feet of width. That's the same as what was proposed in 2019. The proposed 6-acre lot would have that access point, which would provide shared access for both the newly created house as well as the existing house here. This would be the only access, as no further accesses are permitted off of Kimbro Avenue for this parcel. In relation to the 6-foot setback, due to the topography of the site as well as the densely wooded areas, in 2019 it was determined that the best spot for the frontage and the access would be at the north of the parcel, which is where it is today. After the 2019 approvals, the driveway was moved a little bit further north, 6 feet off the side property line. This was due to issues with grading and also to maintain the existing mature trees on site. So there's a few trees here that they didn't want to remove for the construction of the driveway. And with that, the recommendation is before you. A representative of the applicant is here to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I do have a question.
Commissioner Bott?
When these, let's say, we subdivide this into two parcels, right?
Yep.
Do the accesses have to be within the parcel? I mean, could this be, I don't know, re-planned so that the accesses are contained within a single parcel?
So I guess to clarify, and hopefully I'm clarifying for you, the access would be on the 6-acre parcel itself. And then the accesses to the existing parcel would come down from here. We wouldn't require another access, or we wouldn't allow for another access. The county wouldn't. I don't know if that helps you.
No, I was just curious, why would the access to like parcel 2D have to go through parcel 2C? I mean, can it be contained within one single parcel?
Yeah, if I'll defer to it.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bott. So they're proposing a shared access because they couldn't have a second access off of Kimbro Avenue, per the county. So they had to find a way to access both of these new parcels with one access point. Therefore, that's why you're seeing that shared driveway or that shared access. So it's only on one parcel technically, but it provides access to parcel 2D. Does that help clarify?
All right, that's fine,
Okay.
thank you.
To piggyback off of that, I'm assuming that an easement will need to be recorded for the existing parcel, so that if someday the second parcel is sold, that there's still deeded access to the first parcel, correct? Is that part of the?
Correct. There would be
Is
a
that part of
shared,
the stipulations?
yep, there would be a shared driveway access agreement between the two properties, and that would stay with the properties themselves. So
Right.
if people moved, that would still remain.
Okay, thank you.
Emily, I just want to go back to, I think you just briefly mentioned it, but so off of Kimbro Avenue, that's a county-controlled roadway, and so they've got policies about how many accesses can be onto that road, how close. And so that's why there can only be one access onto this two pieces of property.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that's correct.
Okay. Any further questions for staff? All right, thank you.
Yep.
If the applicant would like to approach and add anything additional, please just state your name and address as well.
Thank you very much. My name is Tim Freeman. I'm a land surveyor and a land planner with Foles Freeman Surveying at 5770 Newgate Avenue North in Oak Park Heights, Minnesota. I was involved in the platting of the two parcels in 2017. I was involved in the minor subdivision. It was in 2018. And here I am again today. So, the variance for the 90 feet up there really was because it was the only viable place for that driveway. It used to come off right where the existing house was, and they had to vacate that. The county wouldn't allow, the spacing doesn't allow two driveways, just allows one. So the only way to really do it would be to move it up to the north there, and the parcel just isn't wide enough. That's how that 90-foot piece got there. And then if you look on your screen, you'll see that there's a kind of a green-looking tree there, right at the intersection of the first driveway going south, and that's really the reason why it got put there. The applicant hired an excavator to, it's just a gravel driveway, hired him to build a driveway. He went out there and he looked at the property line and he said, oh, there's a 5-foot easement there. And then he saw the tree and he said, well, I'll go right between them. And that's where he built it. That's really the reasons for the, and the staff report did a really, really good job of explaining all of the details and the heretofores and the herewiths. So I don't have anything else to add unless you have questions. I just want you to know who I am and that I'm here to answer questions if you have any, or if the public has any that you want me to answer.
All right, thank you. Any questions for applicant? Commissioner Rasmussen.
One real quick, so that existing driveway is about 6 feet from the property line, correct?
Yes.
How's that land flow? How's the drainage? Are we draining off onto the neighbor's property
No,
or is it coming towards?
To the south, yep.
All right.
And it's actually fairly flat through there. I included a couple of photographs, but they're not in your packet, but it's, basically wide open and there's this great big maple tree and it runs between the property line and the maple tree. So we knew that the city staff was interested, as we were, to keep the trees. So that's how it ended up there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open public hearing on this application. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the application can now step to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close public hearing on this application. Any further discussion from commission?
I think it makes sense, their request. It was approved last time. I'm fine with it this time.
All right. Any further discussion?
I'm just curious to know if there's any construction plans for the new parcel, or if it's just,
Not yet.
okay. Just curious, totally out of curiosity. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve, subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report.
I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Britton. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Commissioner Rasmussen. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Item 6.2 is school bus garage fuel tank, cases PP 2024-010 and SP 2024-010, with Connor Jakes presenting.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The two applications before this evening are a preliminary plat and site plan review for the ISD 833 Transportation Facility site. The subject site is located along West Point Douglas Road South. I'll note to the west of the subject site is the current Cap Industries owned parcel. They have one warehouse building constructed where the circle is on screen. To the south is the CP Rail, and then to the northeast is the Glen Grove Business Center, which consists of the current Bulletin License Center for reference. A little background on the subject site. There are two lots currently existing today. Both are zone PB planned business. Walk through the history of the orange site on screen before you, 8585 first. So that site was constructed in the 1970s, which was prior to the current development standards we see in code today, those standards such as setbacks, uses, impervious lot coverage, et cetera. And that's why from an aerial, you can see and assume that it doesn't meet most of the current standards. It's because it was constructed prior to the enactment and adoption of those standards into city code. And then also just note that the legal description for that orange lot on screen is currently meets and bounds, and that'll come into play when we talk about the preliminary plat. The blue lot on screen before you, 8587, was constructed in 2001 and met the standards of the code at that time. The submittal or the application was made. That lot was platted with the Glen Grove Business Edition and included the business center. And the approvals that were received in 2001 were a site plan review and then a conditional use permit to expand the non-conforming use. Again, that non-conforming use was on the orange site and then expanded to the blue site on screen. So the first proposal before you is a preliminary plat to combine the two lots into one. At the time that the applicant went to the county to submit the lot merger request, the county noted that the western lot was currently meets and bounds and the eastern lot was platted. And so in order to combine those lots, they had to come through with a new plat that shows them combined into one lot. And then staff is taking the opportunity to then plat the three easements that are noted on screen before you just to clean things up and bring it to modern day. Second proposal before you is a site plan review to remove two existing below ground fuel tanks and related equipment and then to install one new above ground fuel tank. The red area on screen would be where those fuel tanks would be removed, and then the blue area is where the new tank would be installed. Site access to the site, there are three access points off of West Point Douglas. Two accesses are secured with rolling gates to deter any unauthorized access to the bus garage parking area. The access to the east side of the site does allow for the employee parking, which is to the rear. There's no additional accesses proposed with this application. Currently existing on site are 203 parking stalls for employee use. The applicant is proposing 166 stalls, which is a removal of 37 stalls. However, the applicant does believe this proposed 166 stalls would be sufficient for the use on site. Currently, there's 125 staff members on site, so that would provide 41 extra stalls to allow for future growth if or when that occurs on site. The applicant is also proposing a trash enclosure as the current receptacles are not enclosed. So that enclosure does meet setbacks. The materials and colors do complement the structure. There's an image on screen of what that enclosure is proposed to be. The applicant is also proposing to remove the existing chain link and barbed wire fence along West Point Douglas and replace that with the Ameristar montage fence, which is our common fence found throughout the industrial and commercial areas of the city. The fence on the rolling gate would be replaced with that Ameristar montage fence to really tie in with the other parcels on West Point Douglas Road South, such as Park Place Storage, for example. Applicant also did submit a detailed landscaping plan that meets all code requirements. The proposed plantings do meet the requirements of the planned business district, and the landscape plan is on screen before you. And with that, I'll leave the recommendation on screen before you. Staff is available for any questions, and the applicant's in attendance as well for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Rasmussen.
Could you help me understand the difference between meets and bounds versus plotted property?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Rasmussen. So before a property is platted, it's meet and bounds technically. So it's a long legal description that's hard to understand. And it's, X feet, X, to kind of describe the boundary of that parcel. And then when a plat comes through, it converts it into a lot and block. So that's typically what you see in, residential development or business where it's lot 1, block 2. or, Lot 2, Block 2, et cetera. So as part of the platting of that parcel to the east, it was part of the Glen Grove Business Edition, so that platted Lot 1, Block 1, which is this blue parcel, and then Lot 2, Block 2, which was actually the business center. So it converts it to really lot block.
So it's both giving you the same info, it's just how it's organized or?
Yeah, that's
described,
correct.
written
Yep,
down.
and then with the plat, it would show the easements clearer as well, instead of paper easements that don't show up on county GIS, for example. So.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Commissioner Stevens?
Can you explain, it was kind of hard to tell on the plans what all is being replaced or what's all being dug up, and are they redoing the pond? Maybe you could just talk about that, and then I'll probably have a follow-up question.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Commissioner Stevens. So the fuel tanks are currently located here. So that would be dug up. The tanks would be removed or sealed as code requirements, MPCA standards. And then the disturbed area for the new tank would be outlined here. So that would be, currently I believe it's a grass area shown, so that would be replaced with concrete. And then the fuel tanks and pumps, related equipment. And the applicant did reconfigure the pond to account for the impervious increase and has submitted the required modeling to show that that reconfiguration is sufficient to handle that increased impervious as well.
Okay, is there any, I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but when you do something like this, if they were redeveloping it, would they be required to test and see if there was contamination in the soils? Like, is that something that would be beneficial at this time with the underground tanks?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Stevens, I believe under a redevelopment scenario, that would be correct. Due to the application where they're removing, replacing, I don't believe we would require any contamination testing, but I'd also defer to our assistant city engineer if she has anything additional to add, but I don't believe with a proposal like this that would be required. However, I would note the applicant would follow all MPCA standards. So if they do pull those tanks and there is contamination noted at the time they're pulling them, then they'll go in and do the sufficient testing that's required at that point.
Okay, just curious. I was thinking if there was any testing and they were redoing the pond, if the pond wasn't lined, it might be a good time to line it and prevent further contamination, I guess was all I was thinking.
Yeah, and Commissioner Stevens, I'll just add that they are proposing to line that pond and bring it to
Okay.
current day standards.
Perfect, thank you.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. Sorry.
Commissioner Bott?
So why is the underground fuel tank being replaced by an overground fuel tank? What is the necessity there?
Yeah, I would defer to the applicant on that one. I believe it's probably preference, but I would defer to the applicant to answer that question. It's okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff, and then we'll get to
I have one
applicant.
question.
Commissioner Knable?
So are they just going to run new lines to gas pumps on the, I guess, lot one? Or how are they going to, or are they providing access to the above-ground tank?
Yeah, Commissioner Knable, so access now for the buses would come through here and then work kind of like this in a kind of direction there to allow access for the buses. And then those new pumps would be located next to the tank, and then the lines would be run from the tank to the pumps. So there'd be circulation through the site with the two secured rolling gate access points.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if they're going to run piping underneath there to where the old pumps were.
I don't believe so.
Any further questions for staff? All right, thank you. This time, if the applicant would like to approach.
My name is Kevin Bull with BKBM Engineers. My address is 11623 Fergus Street Northeast in Blaine, Minnesota. To answer your question about the replacement, they're just getting old and near their end of their useful life. If you go out there, you could see that they're just starting to get really rusted, all the pumps are and everything. And overall, there's just concerns about the length that these tanks have been in the ground, trying to get them replaced and new ones put in, so preference is.
And why above ground versus replacing the existing underground?
Yeah, above ground, it's cheaper for one. Also provides them the ability to, move them if they ever needed to in the future. It's just, there's a lot of reasons as well, just for, if there is any leakage, you can see it easier versus it being underground. Not that we're expecting leakage, but it's kind of easier to maintain and see it when it's above ground versus below grade like that, so.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Yeah, I will say one last thing, for the contamination portion, as you had mentioned, we do have unit pricing. It's already in the contract and everything. If we do encounter contamination, we'll mitigate that per the MPCA's requirements, so.
Thank you.
Awesome,
Thank
thanks.
you. This time we'll open public hearing on the application. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the application can approach, state their name and address.
Bonnie Matter, 6649 Inskip Avenue South, Cottage Grove. Hello, Chairman and Commissioners, thank you. Yeah, the only thing that I wondered about when I was reading through this is why an above ground, but I was more concerned about how close is it to the railroad tracks? And is there a possibility of a derailment? Probably not, but how close is it to the railroad tracks? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? All right, at this time, we'll close public hearing on the application. And if I could have staff talk about how close we are to the railway, I'm assuming there's a setback requirement from the railroad.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I don't have the exact measurement of how far that tank is from the railroad, but CP Rail was contacted and approved that location without worries. And then staff also went through a derailment scenario, et cetera, and to account for, any possible scenarios throughout the city. So we're aware of that, working with CP Rail, and did receive their approval without concerns or comments related to that.
All right.
Can I follow
Commissioner
up with
Fisher.
that? So there's fencing that goes around the west side of that. Is that gonna be that, the picture of the fence that you showed? Because right now it's chain link, right? So is that gonna be between the tank and the railroad track back there too as well?
Yep,
That
Commissioner
material?
Fisher. Yep, so there's a fence proposed that would basically come through here and tie into that
Right,
chain
because it
link
has to
throughout
be
the site.
enclosed because of, obviously there's controlled gates and whatever, so it has to
Yep.
be completely enclosed in.
Yep, that's correct.
Right, okay.
Any further discussion by the commission on the application? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report.
I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Britton. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Moving to item 6.3, zoning and sign code updates, case TA 2024-012 with Mike Mrosla presenting.
All right, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Feels like we just did this yesterday. So, as you are aware, we did a lot of hard work and a long time on the zoning code. It's been implemented for about a year, and throughout that time, we've noticed some things that need to be corrected or some minor adjustments. The most of the amendments before you tonight are formatting corrections. We had some tables that had some misspellings in there and some other minor corrections. However, we do have some items we'll talk about throughout the presentation that are more discussion items that I'm bringing up, we'll talk about tonight. We did add some definitions for clarity. We did update. We missed this as we're going through it, so we want to make sure that we updated the trash enclosure materials to match the principal structure. However, when we've been implementing it for last year, most applicants have been working with us on that. They understand that was our ordinance beforehand, and so this is something that kind of slid through the cracks, as this was a major lift when we did this back in 2022. We then also added educational facilities to the R6 and R5 districts. All the rest of the residential districts allow for schools, so we want to include them as well. We did clarify the site plan review procedures. Right now, the way the language is ran in within your packets doesn't clearly state what triggers a site plan review. So we want to put a good purpose statement in there stating what triggers a site plan review, so it's very clear for applicants and we can guide them through the process. So we cleaned that up a little bit, add some additional requirements on that one. We also then wanted to add in there places of worship and religious institutions as a conditional use permit in the R2 district. Again, all the other residential districts had them, so we had to make sure for consistency throughout the code. So we did that. Then we also removed the language stating that accessory structures cannot exceed the footprint of the principal structure. As we looked at the built environment, that piece of code could not be implemented the way it was because there's numerous examples, especially in the Thompson Grove and in the more rural parts of the community where the accessory structures by right can be built bigger than the principal structure. So we decided to remove that part, just a little thing there. But some of the other items we want to talk about, one big one that we're bringing back as part of the application tonight is the historic properties conditional use permit. Originally, staff removed this item thinking that the underlying zoning district could handle it. However, upon discussions with staff and property owners and city council, we decided to bring this item back. So the proposed language in front of you tonight closely mirrors the original language. However, we cleaned it up to bring it to modern terms, modern conditions and times. So we added definitions before. All it stated was limited commercial ventures. It did not have a definition for what that was. So it's very vague of what was permitted on these properties. Also, we have 19 properties that are currently on on our local register, and there's 5 properties, I believe, on the national register. So you have to be on one of those two to be able to get a historic properties conditional use permit or be added to those lists. And we have a whole code section on how to do that if there is one out, if we want to add to them. Again, we want to make sure it follows the conditional use permit standards and findings. So nothing different. We were originally going down the avenue of having a separate process for this. However, working with our city attorney, we said, let's just use the existing standards in our conditional use permit since we have them for findings and standards for these use permits. So all we really did is just really cleaned it up, really easy to comprehend. That was our whole intent of our zoning code update, readability and ease. So we're bringing it back. We don't have any applications right now, but we think this is a very beneficial piece of code to have back. And so it is coming back. Then the next one we realized after doing some review and analysis, a lot of communities within the metropolitan area have a DNR shoreline ordinance. So what that ordinance usually allows for is a placement of an accessory structure in front of the principal structure. So if you live on a lake or a river, for example, like here, a lot of times you cannot build an accessory structure behind your principal structure due to setbacks to the river. So city historically has been permitting variances. From our review, we found at least 9 of them that received some kind of approvals to construct an accessory structure in front of the principal structure. And then again, we dug in a little deeper and realized that we had a number of properties that received approvals for setbacks to bluffs, at least 6 that we could find. All these properties are within the Mississippi River corridor critical area overlay, the MRCA. So they're all within this boundary area. So we thought to streamline the process instead of going through a variance process where usually the findings of facts are right there. There is a hardship on site due to the bluff or river. So we want to streamline the process by laying out the standards here so we don't have to bring these items before the Planning Commission and City Council. So as the conversations we've had was, we want these properties to have a detached garage in front of the principal structure, not a shed. You know, if you can put the shed back there, usually you can fit that back behind the principal structure, but not these detached garages. So that's why we have a square footage amount of 400 square feet on there. So it has to be greater than that to be located in the front. And we don't allow any other accessory structures besides a detached garage or an accessory garage in front of the principal structure. And you're probably wondering, what is a primary and accessory garage? The principal use is storage of vehicles. That's what it is. So it's not like, for example, a workshop. You have to have a garage door for the principal use is storage of vehicles or other equipment. And so we did share this code with the DNR. They did provide a letter stating that they are in support as it is not within the actual MRCA standards itself. It's outside their purview. So they support this proposed language in front of you tonight. But again, the whole intent is to streamline the process. Then as part of our update 2, we wanted to last year, as part of our update, the only zoning district that had an impervious surface coverage was our R1 district. So we added impervious coverages to all of our other districts. And so what we found out though through that process was that on R3 through R6, we set that bar a little too low. We found out, especially on the newer developments and our higher density projects. When we talk to applicants, they're saying that they're having a hard time meeting that 35%, especially on lots of under 60 feet in width. The house and the driveway take up a lot of that, which leaves no room for a patio or any accessory structures on those properties due to this requirement. So we worked with our engineering department to figure out what should that number be. So what we did then is we worked with our engineering staff and looked at our surface water management plan and figured out, you know, what we should increase them to. So for example, the R3 district will be, we're proposing to increase that to 40%, which meets the standards of our surface water management. R4, we're gonna go up to 50, R5, 50 as well, and then high density, we're gonna go up to 65. Again, they're all within conformance of our surface water management plan. And we just wanna allow people the opportunity to utilize their property and not be, you know, these smaller lots with a bigger product down there, you don't have a whole lot of room. So we wanna make sure people are able to put patios and utilize their yard. And we did a lot of analysis on this too. I like the map on here, so I just want to point that out. We looked at a lot of old neighborhoods using GIS and current neighborhoods to see if there was, and if you was a current neighborhood, you would really see a lot more red and orange on there because the house takes up so much of that 35%. So we found 40% is that kind of that sweet spot. Another thing we are proposing here, again, our R4 district is our missing middle housing district. The intent of this district is something between our single-family residential and then our medium-density residential. So this is where you can have your duplexes, your smaller lots. There's a lot more freedom in the zoning district. Right now, we have a couple of them implemented throughout the community. This is really based off of the Coloradosa development by Lennar in the northern part of the community where they had a mixture of product types. That's where we use our base for this. And so it's been implemented now at Mississippi Landing and Greymont Village is where it's going vertical, actually. And we have a lot of developers asking us about these 45-foot lots. They really like that number right now. So what we're proposing to do is to be consistent with the stuff that was previously approved. We're requesting to bump that number from 55 feet down to 45 feet to be consistent with what is built out there in the built environment and the requests we're currently seeing. We don't see that number going much lower than that. You know, once you get smaller than that, the setbacks and everything else gets really tight. And so, and speaking of national developers such as Pulte and Lennar, they're comfortable with that 45. That's always, I think it's good when you're doing these kind of zoning updates, is that talk to other people, see how that's gonna impact them, making sure we're making the corrective decision, you know, getting the correct input. So one other thing we did do as part of this update is we updated the purpose statement to remove arterial. That was an error. And the only arterial in Cottage Grove is Highway 61. So the intent of this to be adjacent to major roadways such as collectors. So on this map here on the right, all the orange and kind of light brown are collector roadways. So that's the intent. We want you to back up to a middle of our major roadway or our major, more intense use. So we wanted to clean that up too, so it makes it for easier implementation. And so it kind of clearly guides, as the comprehensive plan does have this functional roadway classification map in there, so we can point and say, okay, yes, the roads are gonna be extended to this kind of type here. Yes, we could support this proposed zoning in this area. So that's another one that we're looking at doing. Another big item we're gonna be proposing to do is remove the sign code from this zoning code. As part of the 2022 update, we put the sign code into the zoning code. However, historically, the sign code has lived in the building section of our code. And that why it was there is because they are comparable. However, it's a building matter. A lot of the stuff we look at is streamlined process. We approve it it's all very simple to implement and approve. There's not a lot of variances. Request, we have a bunch of procedures and processes that are built into the code that allows for staff to administrate and approve these items and not have to bring them before you for planning commission. So what we're requesting as part of this approval is to take that back out. And we're gonna put that in its own section now, not in the building, but in Title 12. So it's all by itself, standalone. It does have the processes in there, to, if it does have to need a variance or something like that, we can come before you. Otherwise, 99.9% of the time, staff has implemented this ordinance. There's only been a couple times since Emily was telling us that she's been here in her 5 years, that she had to come before council and city planning commission once, do a sign code adjustment, and that was for Anderson Window. Unique site, big, they needed some flexibility. However, if our new zoning code in front of you tonight, or excuse me, new sign code that we're actually been working on for over the past year, we corrected that. So we can allow applicants to do that without going through a formal process. We built up the directional signs. We kind of put more standards in there to make the process easier for the applicants and staff to review and approve these sign codes. So as part of your approval sign recommendations, we're requesting to move the sign codes back out into its separate section by itself instead of the zoning code. So we can continue to do approving signs that we have historically done here. Some cities have them in the zoning code, some don't. Historically, City of Cottage has had them separate. So we're just gonna kind of go back to that, unless you want to look at signs. But that's the last of it. A lot of it inside your packets is red lines. As you see, there's just minor corrections, a lot of the stuff. We did have 2 workshops of council to kind of go over these to make sure that nothing kind of caught them off guard. Kind of same thing I'm doing with you tonight, brief exercises. We did go through the sign code a little with them too, the city council. And we did change some of the items in there to address some of their concerns. The public hearing notice was published in the Pioneer Press. We have received no comment on that. And the recommendations on the screen, I'm available for any questions as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Stevens?
Sorry I didn't ask this at the workshop.
Oh, that's all right.
But can you go to the slide about the impervious changes? You probably knew I was gonna ask about this.
I had a
one.
feeling.
So, the high-density residential, I have 2 questions. You talked about updating the stormwater management plan. I'm just very curious if you applied these new, if you assume everybody maxes it out, did you get a lump sum? Like, what's the difference of new impervious, assuming it all develops out, from the existing percentages to the proposed percentages? And like, how big of a difference does that make in the city? So I realize that's a follow-up question. You don't have to know it right now. Just kind of curious. But then, lastly, with the high-density residential, if you move it from 50 to 65, how does that leave enough room? Are there a lot of like tree and landscape plans, and how does that impact room for those? Like, you talk about the lots being thinner, then are you gonna have room for trees on either sides if everybody's maximizing it out?
Correct. So the first question, I'm going to let our assistant city engineer, Crystal, address that one. I think I have an understanding, but I'll let Crystal do that. The second one is the 65%, we actually could have went a little higher than that. I think our surface water management could allow us to go like 70 or 75, but we thought 65 was a good number to allow for landscaping and all those items to fit on that site nicely. So we thought that'd be a nice middle mix, but the surface water management plan did allow it to go up to, I think, 70 or 75. So we thought 65 is a little lower, leaves room for landscaping in that.
Okay,
So with that, I'll turn it over to our assistant city engineer.
thank you.
Thank you. Chair Frazier and Commissioner Stevens and members of the Plan Commission. I understand that the review of the surface water management plan that was done, I'm not positive that it went into the level of detail like you're asking. If everything was built out per the impervious percentages, how much do we have left to go? They did do a very detailed review of how the curve numbers that are in the surface water management plan equate to these percent impervious numbers. And as Mike just alluded to, there's a lot of fluff, especially in those high density. Like, our surface water management plan plans for quite a bit more impervious than what we're proposing here. So it would allow for more.
Sure.
And we'd still be meeting our surface water management plan.
Okay.
Does that help?
And I'm not as concerned about the surface water management plan, I guess, just in terms of new impervious, right? Because it impacts, I guess, everything, but I get what you're saying, so yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
yeah, we don't expect any ponds to blow up or any
Right.
of our downstream infrastructure to be impacted by these changes.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for staff?
I just want to add one more point if we can
Yes,
share.
go ahead.
We did share this with the watershed district too, these numbers, to make sure they were comfortable with that as well.
Okay,
So just want to point that out, that this was shared with South Washington.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, thank you. Since the city is the applicant, we don't have to do that step, so we'll just go right to open public hearing.
I wrote my questions down, majority of them, to help you speed this process up and we'll get. I ask, thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
This isn't part of my time. We had more than 3 minutes to present all of that. I'm gonna talk fast.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Bonnie Matter, 6649 Inskip Avenue South, Cottage Grove, Minnesota. Okay, Chairman and council members, commissioners, excuse me, I never quite know which body I'm talking to. I know, but I just, forget the names. Okay, I'm just gonna start in on my questions. First was item number 2, and I guess I'll go through it. I'm looking at a different document. It was a document that was in with the meeting materials. Item number 2 was allow accessory structures to be constructed in front yards when adjacent to the Mississippi River and within the MRCA. And I just would like to make sure that whenever that happens, that the name, title, and department of the authorizing DNR representative who said the MRCA database update was not required is included, okay? So that's what I'd like to see happen there. And anytime a name of DNR is mentioned, I would appreciate the department, the title, the name, because there's many different departments. Okay, item number 3, update impervious surface coverage percentages for our districts and title the table line the same for all our districts to be consistent. Are you following with me? Do you know where I am? Okay, good. Staff is proposing to increase the impervious surface area amounts by 10 to 15%, depending on the zoning district and lot sizes. Does the Mississippi Landing stormwater design account for the potential increase in impervious surfaces on individual lots under this ordinance change? That area down there it's a different animal. And so I would like to make sure I understand that. Thank you. I'll keep going. And I'd like a copy of the Mississippi Landing stormwater design. I requested it on April 1st, I think. I might have requested it before then, but I still have not received it. And I had also called and I requested the SWPPP plan for the city and the MS4. I was told it was I don't even know if I was told it was being updated. I think when I looked on the website, it's not up to date. And I requested the current plan, but I haven't received it. Then we're into item 6, clarify the site plan review procedure and submittal requirements. What does this clarification mean? Does this mean developers can decide to make site plan changes without coming back to the Planning Commission for review? How will this differ from what is done today? What are the boundaries for this type of decision? What would be considered minimal? What would be considered out of bounds? Provide some examples. How would this change affect the Mississippi Landing development? Is this request due in part to the Cottage Grove City Council meeting and preliminary development agreement with Rachel Development on September 6, 2023? Confirm that the city of Cottage Grove has and will follow the 11.15.5H MRCA admin ordinance. Cottage Grove has a different numbering system Theirs would be 11.13.5H for notification requirements for developments in the area of or that may impact Gray Cloud Dune Scientific and Natural Area, SNA, and the Gray Cloud Slough, Mississippi River. Item 8, remove language stating that accessory structures cannot exceed the footprint of the principal structure. Please include language that all site structures cannot exceed maximum allowable impervious surface area for the lot size. And then item 9, reduce lot width standard in R4 transitional residential zoning district to 45 feet. With the reduction of lot widths and increased density, what is the requirement for fire-resistant barriers or walls between homes? Then I just want to go back to this impervious surface thing. When they say an additional, plus 10% or plus 15%, if you actually get into the acreage, it's a considerable amount. It's not, it's a lot. Do you know what I'm saying? If you take 40% of 10,000 feet or 50% of 10,000 feet, you're at it's a different percent when you get into actual physical acreage. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Ms. Batter, we will accept the letter and put that in the record as well as part of the public hearing. All right, any further public comments? Seeing none, we will close public hearing. And I don't know how staff wants to divide that up.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, there are several items in here that will require follow-up in writing that we're not going to address right away this evening, but we'll provide an update back to the Planning Commission next month, and of course to Ms. Matter over the next month as we provide some clarification to some of these detailed questions.
All right. I do, and I could probably just have Mike, if you want to come back up. I think some of these we can probably deal with now. I realize some of the requests from Ms. Matter are provide some documentation, provide some information, so we're not gonna do that tonight. But a couple of these, so I'm looking at item 3, Mississippi Landing Stormwater Design, account for the potential increase. And so I think during your presentation, you had mentioned that city staff has looked at the stormwater design, the watershed design plans for the city in accounting for this change. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sure.
Okay. So that would include the Mississippi Landing Plan.
As part of the review process, that has been reviewed by staff.
All right. As far as, we'll go to item 8, which is on page 2, changing the language to specifically in that section include that the total site structures can't exceed the maximum impervious surface area for lot size. There's already a separate part of the ordinance that requires all lots to stay under the maximum impervious surface.
Chair, that is correct. There's a number of parameters that we use to make sure that that impervious coverage is met. There's setbacks, there's lot coverage, there's a number of items that we use. So that's the way we keep our checks and balances.
Okay, and so builders, developers required to follow all city ordinances on building and setback structure ordinances and requirements?
Yep. Well, even before today, I was working on a plan, Chair, at my desk that was for an accessory garage, and I had to, make sure that the plans, they had the appropriate coverage and make sure that they're meeting the ordinance standards.
All right, and so making this change in the language would be duplicitous because it's already been covered somewhere else?
Correct.
All right. Item 9 on page 3. I know we've talked about this before with these thinner lots where we're getting down to 40, 45 foot wide lots, and we talk about fire barriers, but maybe you can just talk briefly about city's practice and experience with these thinner lots and the requirements that I think public safety has as well as the builders have for those.
Correct, Chair. So when we receive these applications, we do forward it to our fire marshal for review, and our building inspections team do review them. Generally, when the separation is less than 10 feet, there has to be a difference in material on those walls, fire-rated material, especially on the eaves that overhang that closer. There is requirements for that to be fire-rated, but usually it's under 10 feet. We try to work with our applicants to make sure that 10 feet or plus. A lot of the builders do try to keep that, so they don't have to put that cost into it. So that is something that they're aware of usually before they apply for an application. But if they do, we do have the standards ready for that, just in case.
Okay, and then let's go back to item 6. I kind of skipped that one because it's got a bunch of questions in there. But so item 6 is essentially just, my understanding, streamlining how a site plan review comes before the planning commission and then city council and how that gets funneled.
Yes, Chair. It's partially it is that, and the other part is for staff to know what triggers a site plan review. The current language is very vague, so we want to add language in there. If an applicant is, for example, adding more than 10% the total square footage to the building, that triggers site plan review. Or if you're modifying the parking lot, that triggers it. So we just want to make sure that when an application comes before us, we know what triggers that. And right now, the language is very vague. And so a lot of times, we had one earlier this year, we're like, we don't know. So we had to ask our city attorney, and that's what we did. We don't want to, that's not our, we want to provide great customer service. So the intent behind that is that for staff, more or less, to have that checkbox saying, does it meet one of these things? Yes, okay, site plan review. And so instead of having a very vague, and then the process, how to streamline it through planning commission and city council.
Okay, so the proposal before us then is to make these categories of what's a minimal versus something that needs to come before planning commission, city council, more clear for staff.
Correct.
And the applicants.
That is correct. Otherwise, and also too, it also helps with building permits. We get a building permit in, doesn't need, so.
Okay. All right, I think that was everything that I had caught that doesn't require extra, but Emily?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'll note, it looks like we made it through all of these, and so we won't follow up in writing, because I think we did a pretty good job of providing some detailed clarification, but the one under number 6 that I would add, I want to make very clear, we're talking about a site plan review process amended or what Mike's proposing as amended. The Mississippi Landing project is a preliminary plat, so 2 different processes, so I just wanted to make that clarity.
Okay. Does anyone else on the commission have any further questions for staff?
I do have a question.
Sure, Bob.
So this is regarding your proposal to separate out the sign code from the zoning code. I'm not very familiar with the sign code. What is a sign code? I mean, what kind of signs are we talking about here?
That's a great question, Commissioner. So our sign code, we regulate all signs, not your public safety street signs, but signs on buildings, directional signs in parking lots. So, for example, if you go to McDonald's, we have standards for all the signs on that building and in the parking lot for like directional where the drive-through goes. There's menu board standards, and so a lot of it's very cut and dry. Like a menu board cannot exceed 10 square feet, and so we just go through there. It's like a checklist, but it just regulates all signs in the community. Also regulates yard signs, for example. Right now, our code is quiet on that, so we're allowing residents to have up to 2 yard signs in their yard all the time. Right now, it's silent on the matter, so we put that in there. We clarified language on garage sale signs. It's all about signs. And the hard part about signs, it's the First Amendment, free speech. So we had to work very closely with our city attorney on that, because technically we, as staff, cannot read the sign. We have to enforce it by its location and size and all those kind of things. We can't go up the sign and read it per se. So it's comes down to a lot of times, it comes down to aesthetics, health, safety, and general welfare of the community on the sign ordinance.
And my follow-up question is, by removing the sign code from 11 to 12, do we tend to lose something? I mean, are we all looking, or is there any possibility that we would, why is it there in the first place? And by removing it, are we going to miss something?
That's another great question, Commissioner. A lot of cities do have in their sign, in their zoning code. And our city attorney historically has had it in the zoning code for other municipalities that she's worked for. However, the city of Cottage Grove historically has had it not in there. And so we're not really losing anything, we're just moving it out. So in the event that a change had to occur, because a lot of times the First Amendment stuff, we have to do sometimes quick changes or modifications, it can go straight to city council. And city council can make that modification and approval without delaying the process. So a lot of those things happen very quick, and we have to have like a severability clause or something else in there. So we bring it right to our city council then to get that amended, due to impact of the First Amendment.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Any further discussion by the commission? How about a motion?
Motion to approve the amendments to the City Code, Title 11, zoning regulations, and relocate Section 11-3-14 signs to Title 12, subject to minor modifications by city attorney.
All right, I have a motion from Commissioner Rasmussen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Knable. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0. Move on to item 7 is approval of the minutes. 7.1 is the Planning Commission meeting minutes from March 25th. Unless there are any additions or modifications, I look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Rasmussen. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0. 8 is reports. 8.1, recap of April city council meetings with Emily presenting.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so going back to April, actually April 3rd, I didn't have any items to note, but April 17th, the Summer Valley residential subdivision that we presented before you back in March was approved by the city council for 71 single-family lots. This is that kind of final square, I'll call it, on the north side of Military, kind of in between Rolling Meadows, Parkview Point, if any of those names help orientate you. So that preliminary plat was approved, so we're awaiting now a final plat submittal for that. So with that though, however, I do have our council member Kambata here if he has anything additional or you might have questions for him.
Thank you, Emily. I don't have anything additional to add, but I'll make myself available for questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Kamada? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
8.2 is response to planning commission inquiries. We had a couple from last meeting, so Emily.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So if you recall, several members of the Gray Cloud Island Township Board provided some comment at last month's meeting as it relates to the limiting traffic or the limited traffic from the construction that can go underneath the railroad bridge from the Mississippi Landing development. So yes, some of the equipment, of course, that is coming to the site is not able to make it underneath that bridge. Therefore, they need to take the alternate route up Gray Cloud Island Trail, which extends, of course, through the Cottage Grove, the township, and then into St. Paul Park. So recognizing there are 4 jurisdictions that are kind of impacted by this potential construction traffic, we've coordinated a meeting with all of these jurisdictions to kind of talk through what that looks like. And so we have that scheduled for April 30th to sit down all together and have a better understanding of, if any, those potential impacts.
All right, thank you. 8.3 is planning commission request. Do we have any requests for staff for this meeting? I don't see any. All right. That leaves us with item 9, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn then?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Rasmussen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Britton. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned.